Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the Yala Bitcoin Liquidity series. We'll just give it a few more minutes, let a couple more people join, and then we'll kick off. So sit tight. Also, I see we have Chris with us. I've sent you a speaker invite. Let me know if it's all good. And I see you have a speaker status now. Let's see if it works. Testing, testing.
Testing, GM.
Perfect, perfect. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me today.
All good. Yeah, let's kick things off to not keep you too much longer than we promised. So hi everyone, welcome to as I said before, Bitcoin Liquidity Series episode 6. Today we're joined by Chris Yen, founder and CEO at Plume Network. And I'll give for those of you that don't know, Plume Network is I guess more or less the platform for bridging and managing real world assets, or RWAs, as we tend to call them in this industry. Managing them within the on-chain economy, on-chain. Of course, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks a lot for joining. I guess to dive straight into it, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself personally, as well as what you're working on with Plume?
Of course. Thanks for having me today, and great to get a moment to chat with everybody here. Real quick. Look, I'm one of the founders and CEO of Plume. The long story short for is I mostly kind of my background. I've been a founder for a long time, doing a bunch of different things, a lot around kind of like classic enterprise software and investing. Before as an angel and a VC, and a few I've known my co-founders Teddy and Eugene for a while, and we've been in crypto for some time, doing a bunch of different things, whether it's investing and Teddy and Eugene and them were at sort of they were Coinbase and DRDX and Binance, and our team comes from these places, and we were sort of thinking about this is maybe 2 years ago, thinking about kind of the state of crypto at the time, and thinking about where we were, and more importantly, what was to come. And we felt at the time that there was um, a big gap, and it was mostly around this idea that we were sort of taking a lot of the same ideas and sort of re-hypothecating things around. We're juggling things and doing a lot of the similar things over and over, right? And it's not to
Mhm.
say it was broadly true, right? There's a lot of stuff that was happening that's super interesting, but this is maybe 2 years ago in the depths of the bear, right? When we sort of said, "Hey, look, it's a lot of sort of like squeezing more money out of the same bowl of cash." Right. And what we need to, and while it's great, and there's a lot more to do there, it's not that there's nothing happening, but we wanted to focus more on the onboarding story, and sort of like how do we get more people, and how do we get more use cases, more dollars, more capital into crypto, and sort of led us down the path of RWAs. And I think because we weren't sort of TradFi people coming into RWAs, we ended up having a different take on it, and ended up going from thinking about onboarding to realizing the best way to do onboarding is to sort of bring things in first and make them useful for the existing audience, right? And so that's how we ended up focusing on this, where instead of the TradFi approach, which is a KYC, sort of permission chain, only institutions can use it, all of a thing. It was more of a sticking to kind of crypto ideals, and how we think it was having things open, permissionless, liquid, composable, all these things out there, so we can actually get things into crypto, make them very useful, have additional value for assets that come into on chain, and then from there we can begin to grow. And that's exactly what we've been doing it. So that's been our orientation to date, and it's a lot of this is helping bring a bunch of stuff into crypto, right? That are things in the real world to make it as easy to interact with anything in the real world on chain as you do as crypto native assets, right? You should be able to just click buttons, swap, trade, lend, borrow, do whatever you want, speculate against real world assets, just as you do with crypto assets. And we're not RWA maxis either, right? We're not saying you should only do RWAs. You should do everything, right? Our view is to very much follow in the steps of the stablecoin, right? Which is the stablecoin's the first really RWA that worked, and it's because the stable coin is just crypto, right? It works without even thinking about it, right? You use it without even thinking about it. And from there, you use it interchangeably with crypto native assets as well, right? And that's how we want to make RWAs useful on chain, is to make them as easy to use as anything in crypto, and then also make them composable and as easy to use, along with things like BTC, along with things like ETH, right? And make them, also bring in the real yield and everything as well. So that's kind of the overall idea, kind of how we think about Plume. We built the largest ecosystem to date around this, over 180 projects building on us. We've seen a great usage on our testnet as well, and mainnet coming up soon. So anyway, I'll stop there. Questions, comments?
Very interesting start. I guess to take it back, I guess one level. Um, what is a real world asset?
Yeah, totally.
What what do you think of when you think of RWA
Totally.
or yeah, or
I think,
has this changed in the last 2 years,
yeah, I
or how is
think
it evolving for you as well?
I think my view of it has not changed. I think the world's view of it has potentially changed, and I've never liked it. I think the word
Hmm.
RWA actually is a terrible name. And generally speaking, RWA is, again, going back to the stablecoin, right? Like the stablecoin is an RWA, right? But we don't call it an RWA. And the reason is because we call it a stablecoin, because it's a useful descriptor of what this thing is, right? It tells us what it does, and it describes the functionality without having to describe the sort of properties around it, right? It just tells you what it does. And that's generally how you want products to work, right? You want products like when something is useful, you have a name for it. When it's not, you call it an RWA. Right. That's generally how it is today, right? And so there's no world in which you take things like collectibles, sports cars, financial instruments, real estate, all group them into the same thing, right? So RWAs today are just a general catch-all for everything. Now, that being said, the way we think about RWAs really in relation to Plume is we think RWAs are anything related to the real world, right? And that can be a bunch of different things. You can do things like tokenized, real estate or or protects, right? Just like we had in the last cycle, or things like treasury bills, right? But you could also do a lot of sort of like esoteric things that are less related to the real, that are less like physical, right? We do a lot of things with synthetics, as an example, where you can pull a data feed of something on chain and make that useful, right? So you can maybe say one of our protocols makes it easy to take out 50x lev long on the price of different Pokemon cards, right? And you don't need to tokenize every card to do that, right? You can then bring a data feed on that's related to that and then pull that into a chart and let people trade against this, right? And so that's kind of how we think about this. Anything that interacts and touches the real world, right? We want to make that easy to use and manipulable on chain as well. So that can be, again, things like data. Right. You can pull in things like the weather data, right? Or CPI data or crime rate or sales for this particular thing, right? All of that is real world data, and that's all that is useful on chain in different ways. And you can boil this all the way down to things like, again, tokenizing a treasury bill so you can buy and swap and hold that asset.
Yep, got it. It's quite interesting. What do you see as, I guess, more of a personal question for you, and not so much, yeah, if you take the Flume hat off, if that's possible, what do you see as the most interesting RWAs, quote unquote, not to use that word again, but
Totally, totally, totally.
yeah.
Um, I think most of them are pretty boring, to be honest, right? Generally speaking, everyone getting RWAs when you hear about it gets pretty excited about things like fucking treasuries and T-bills, and it's not bad. We do a lot of those types of things as well, right?
Mhm.
And so nothing wrong there. I mean, the things that I tend to like, for what it's worth, are esoteric things. I almost think of them like subreddits, right? There's like an area where there's a rabid community around that particular thing, right? And you want to see that come on chain and bring their activity, their volume, and their passion to that category on chain. So, one interesting project is a company called it's a Uranium Digital, right? You can trade uranium and buy that kind of stuff on chain and be able to use that across group. I think that's an interesting one. You have things also like there's a whole business that we have around curio, around card breaking, where you can basically trade cards like you would at a casino, right? Or you're doing a lottery, right? Where you can like trade and buy sports cards very easily, and then also maybe you have very esoteric financial instruments as well, right? Where today they're only offered to sort of very exclusive and high net worth folks all around the world, where you're getting huge APYs and results for it, and bringing that on chain so people can use it different ways, right? Are interesting things as well, right? So you have different investment opportunities or different sort of like private credit opportunities where the short duration, 7, 20, 30 days, you can earn very, very healthy APYs with very low risk on those things. And so that's another interesting one. But I think also one broad category is I would say the thing that I think is going to be most interesting around this is going to be the net new things, right? A lot of this and the way RWA is framed at a definitional level is taking things in the real world and then carbon copying it on chain, right? Because you're just tokenizing something or bringing something to the world on chain, right? I think it's
Mhm.
cool, and I'm glad we could do that. And there's a lot to do there. I think an area that's just under talked about and under explored, perhaps, that I think is interesting is how do you do net new things that have a relation to the real world, right? Things that are born on chain, right? That maybe you couldn't do in the real world, right? So I'll give you an example. One of our protocols makes it easy for you to do things like trade against cultures or countries, right? So you could like lev long America
Trade
as an
against
example.
cultures.
Yes, right. So you could like lev long America, right? Or you could short Korea, right? Or you could long Western Europe, right? And what does that really mean, right? What they're doing doing is taking a collection of different things. Maybe some are physical things, so you maybe take a bunch of T-bills and put that into one place if you want along America, right? Maybe you have some yield. Maybe you also take in things like the price of or the GDP of America. You take in crime rate, public sentiment. You take in CPI or whatever, right? You index and you sort of weight all these different things, and now you have an index, right? And now you have something you could back test and get a feel of it and trade against that chart, right? And that's a net new thing you cannot do anywhere else, right? Today you have to use various proxies for this, right? If I wanted to trade AI today, I would buy Nvidia, right? But I can't really get access to other things, right? If I wanted to trade BlackRock, what do? I can buy BlackRock or I could buy Ondo, right? Like that tends to be how we do things today, right? If I wanted to do AI on chain, maybe I do AI 16Z or virtuals or whatever, right? But like everything is done in proxies today, right? And so being able to draw a more direct line and a direct relationship from things that people are actually trying to get exposure to the performance of that underlying thing, right? That to me is the interesting thing and something that's net new, and that can be done through synthetics, where you're combining a bunch of different real things, but also synthetic versions. So you have a new index or an ETF, or it could just be pure synthetic, right? One of our protocols also wants to let you do things like trade foods, right? Or like bet on speculative foods, right? So you could like lev long the Mexican burrito, right? And like see if you're just like bullish on that thing. It's like, look, I think we're gonna have more burritos in the future. You could just lev long that, take a position, right? So like things like that are completely new that you could not do before, and I think adds a new dimension and adds new color to what could be done when we think about interacting with the real world on chain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is quite wild. My mind is blown. It's very it's quite cool. Like the idea of yeah, trading cultures and countries, regions.
Yeah, exactly. I
I
mean, look,
guess what's
if you flip up a deck screener today, this is what's happening already, right? If you flip up a deck screener any day of the week, right? Just take a look at the shitters that are on there, right? It's always related to the real world. But it's just you're filtering through a list of 70 rugs, right? And a bunch of 15K liquidity pools, right? With no trading volume to try and get to that, right?
Mhm.
And so that's a horrible onboarding experience. That's how people come into crypto today, right? They want to just very simple exposure to XYZ, and then they have to filter through deck screener, get rugged, right? And then over time figure this out, and if we can improve that, right, and instead of and like just improve that onboarding, right, and just allow this more direct exposure, I think it's a great way to also build a bridge that's out, and that's a complement to the other bridge, which is come in and buy T-bills, come in and get access to some other asset, right, come in and hold the US dollar. That's also a great way. All these things come together, so it's all just different sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about how Plume works on a practical level then? Like how does it improve the, for example, this onboarding process that we just talked about, and
Totally.
how can I use Plume to both trade a culture and to,
Yep.
yeah, I guess tokenize a mortgage, and like how does the platform work and integrate all these different aspects?
Totally, totally. So there's multiple sides of Plume, right? At the end of the day, Plume is just a classic blockchain, right? We are an EVM blockchain, and we want it to be as simple and straightforward to use as any blockchain today, right? So, we are currently in between our testnet and mainnet, so there's nothing to do yet. You can pop over to our like interim testnet on our website if you want to, but the chain itself is not back out. We have a private devnet right now for our engine for the ecosystem, but the way that Plume works at least is ultimately it's a blockchain, right? And so as there's two sides. There's the developer side and the end user side. As an end user, it's the same thing. I come over, I bridge over. It's EVM chain again, so any bridge works. We use layer zero, but we have a bunch of them, right? You can bridge over and then just swap and buy and use the dApps as needed. There's really nothing new, and it's designed to be as simple to use as anything in crypto. You don't have to think about it, right? There is nothing. It's meant to be just like you interact with stables, right? Or any crypto native assets. It just happens to have a tie to the real world, right? That's the only thing. On the other end, as a developer, I would say is a couple things we've built on top of the chain itself to make it easier to navigate, easier to work with. We have the chain itself, but we also have two other products. One called Plume Arc, which is our modular tokenization engine, right? And so you can use Plume Arc to bring and tokenize real world things and bring them on chain. Number two, you have Plume Nexus, right? And Nexus is our Oracle aggregator. And again, both these products, we're not competing with things in the market. We're there to complement them, right? If you need an alternative, you
Mhm.
can. But if you want to use things like Securitize for tokenization, you're more than welcome to. They're great partners of ours, and we think they're a great product, right? If you want to use any Oracle out there, you can use them, right? We work with them as well, right? We have no preferences, no biases towards these things. We just think there's a lot of things they haven't done yet that we tried to make easier. But if they want to take it, we're more than happy for them to do it. But Next is a way for our Oracle providers as well to bring data on chain, right? And for you to easily grab real world data, right? And so the idea with those two things is really to sort of elevate and abstract subtract away the experience of having to quote unquote build in RWAs, right? As a developer in RWAs today, or as someone who wants to build in RWAs, most of the time, the classic view is you need to own the asset, right? If I want to tokenize a house, I need to own the house, right? If I want to bring a bunch of cards on chain or a Pokemon card or something, I have to own a bunch of cards, right? Those things are huge limiters to what you can do here, right? And there's a lot of great engineers. Now we always think, look, the magic about the blockchain and crypto has been it's open permissionless innovation. You can take any asset and mix and match how you want, and then it's been able to create great new things. It's a huge barrier to be able to actually have to own these things before you can build here. So both Plume Arc and Plume Nexus are ways for developers to come in without having to own the underlying to be able to create new things, because now you can pull any data feed, create any market around it, right? You can pull tokens right off of any asset that's being tokenized through Arc and then mix and match them in different ways, right? And create new indices or create new products or whatever you want to do, right? So both these things, if you want to do and actually tokenize the asset itself and do the underlying work, you're welcome to. You can use Plume Arc, you can use anything and bring it on chain, right? Or if you want to just interact with it on top, you can then, it's just a classic blockchain, right? So the intention is that there's a lot of specific things around translating the real world into an on-chain stuff that we build tools around to make it very easy. So that's kind of like the experience for Plume. Once DevNet or testnet is done again, which will be pretty soon, and then mainnet, it'll just be like any experience for the end user, right? And then for a developer, it'll also be similar thing where you can come over, check out the docs, and begin building anytime.
Okay, awesome. Very interesting. Can you tell me,
Totally.
can you go back, I guess, about 30 seconds where you mentioned one of the main problems to, I'm not sure if it's a problem to adoption or to the development is the actual ownership requirements. Can you expand on this a bit?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's just that, I mean, think like anything else, you want to have as many builders and as many people come into the market as possible to create new things. Ultimately, like we said, adoption drives everything, right? And usage drives everything, right? And
Mhm.
we're always hungry for new dApps, but the amount of people that can interact, but you have to make it easy to interact with these things, and interact with it. So as an engineer today, if I wanted to build an LST or I wanted to build some product or lending market or whatever, right? Sure, there's barriers. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do either, right? But you have to build the but it's all available to you, right? Meaning you can go out there, you can read the docs, you can write some code, whether it's Solidity or Rust or whatever you want to write, right? And you can just deploy your product on chain and get it working, right? And then of course go to market, liquidity, all these things are still up to the founder or the engineer at that point, but it's open, right? In RWAs, the problem is like, many times you don't even have access to any of these assets. If you want to interact with the world, like for tokens, I can just, it's an infinite market. I just go to Uniswap and grab whatever I want, or, again, the
Mhm.
idea that everything's open and permissionless is a huge sort of like, in my opinion, a foundational piece of crypto. And with RWAs, it's just a huge gate. You cannot access 90% of the real world yet, on chain. And so that just, it limits who can do things. And when you're trying to convince someone that owns a bunch of real estate to bring it on chain, as an example, and then only then can you actually tokenize those assets and make them useful on chain, it becomes a very challenging thing. It just limits the surface area in which we can interact with, and then in turns limits the sort of amount of developers that want to build here, right? And so I think that the first step is to open up that funnel and make sure that we make it as easy as possible to bring anything on chain, right? And that's why we have
Mhm.
synthetics and why we have data feeds to complement that, because tokenizing real things is slow. It's painful. It's hard, right? It's not to say it's impossible and not to say it's like, the worst thing in the world, but relative to pulling a data feed, it's still harder, right? And so we can complement to do both of these things and use both of them to kind of push and pull to make, interacting with the real world easy, right? Interacting with anything on chain in the real world should be as easy as interacting with any crypto. If I want to build something with ETH today, I could just build with ETH. There's nothing there's like literally nothing to think about, right? I just need to have an idea and
Yep.
the ability, and I get going. If I wanted to build something around, build a market around, uh, around like weather prices or like crime rates in different cities, it's not that easy to do today. Right? You're going to get stuck at step one, which is how do I even get that thing? You know, and so that's what we want to change.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Totally.
What are some of
But
the other blockers to adoption? I think it's quite interesting. Yeah, I guess you mentioned of Tether as an RWA in the beginning because I never thought of it as a real world asset, but it's so obviously is, and it's such a I guess it's probably the most successful example of an RWA,
yep,
and it's also I guess one of the most successful examples of crypto or tokenization of an asset in general.
yep. Totally.
Are there any, I guess one question is, are there any other assets or tokens or applications like Tether that I guess me personally am not realizing that it's actually an RWA? And
Probably not
if
as
not,
much.
what are the blockers?
Yeah, it's not really as much. I really think stables are the only one that really matter today, and I think the real blocker has been it's a couple different things. I think that it's a few things, right? Like ultimately it comes down to just like time, right? Think that you just haven't had there needs to be more sort of market a time in the market for these things to sort of coalesce. And so when you think about like these different assets, 99%, right? I think 99% of people in sort of like in RWAs are TradFi people, right? Coming to do TradFi things on chain. So there's actually been a lot of attempts to do this. People do this for years, right? We've had the sort of security token thing. We've had like every couple of years someone tries to do RWAs on chain, right? But the reason why they've all failed to date and nothing's worked except the stablecoin is because they all think of this from a trad mindset. Let's build a permissioned chain. Let's build a KYC garden, right? Or what they're really trying to do is trying to bring the blockchain to the real world, right? Versus bringing the real world to the blockchain, right? They don't
Hmm.
understand that crypto is a network of things, right? And you need to plug your assets into the network versus try to use it as a piece of technology to automate some system for you. Right. And so that's been the issue there. And that's why there's a big barrier. And the reason that's changed recently is a few different things. One is just I think regulation is a factor for what it's worth. Like that's a big deal, right? But I don't think it's the driving factor, right? People tend to blame regulation, right? Regulation follows adoption, right? When people wanted, when Travis started Uber, right? Like it was illegal to hail a car that way, right? But people wanted to do it, so they got the law changed, right? Like that's how this works, right? And so it comes from that. So really, where this began to the change, I think, was a unique moment in time when we started this company about 2 years ago, right? Where the off-chain yields were better than on-chain yields for the first time, right? And so you had a 5% treasury that printed better than 2% on compounded Aave by holding stables. And that
Hmm.
told us a lot of stuff. And that sort of led to everything because people realized that one, even when everything was fucked, you'd rather keep money on chain. Right. It wasn't going to shrink more than that, than where we were at that point. And those people wanted to keep there. That was great. Number two, that it turns out people were open to real yield, right? It wasn't about crypto versus art, it's how do you use both at the same time, right? That was the second part. And there was a realization that real yields were good, right? And then number three was that it showed us that the form factor mattered a lot. There are multiple ways to access the treasury. You could go through something like an Ondo, right, or Centrifuge, right, or whatever, right, where you do a classic walled garden thing, KYC up, QP, only buying $100,000 slugs, have to hold for a year, no transferability, right? There's that, which has seen some success, but there's the other side where you look at something like a MakerDAO or a DAI, right? That's a classic crypto native product, right? Or I guess whatever they're calling now, USDS or something, right? Like you look at that, right, which is an indirect way to get exposure to the treasury, right? It's not quite the same thing as buying a T-bill, but you get the same benefits because you're getting the yields right now. You don't own the underlying, but you get the economic interest on top, right? That product has what, $6 billion in TVL, and they've had their own, spits and spurts. It's a different thing. It's not a direct analogy for what it's worth, right? You can't compare Ondo and Maker, but just to show you as an example, the experience for Maker is very much crypto, whereas these other ones are just not quite as much, right? And so that sort of shows it. And those three things, right, in that moment, I think began a lot of what's happening today, right? And in tandem, I think the accelerant has then been to say Larry Fink getting on stage and talking about tokenization every day. I think Gensler getting fired. I think Trump coming into office. I think the BTC ETF. All these things are accelerants on that. But I think the underlying sort of the root of this is always user behavior and demand and try, and that's what drives it. That moment I think pulled out a lot of things, and then on top, all these macro trends pushed us forward further.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I guess to take it
Totally.
one step back again. So imagine you're talking to the ultimate TradFi boomer right now. Um, I bring you the question: why does this need to be on chain? Why do T bills need to be on chain? Why not just go
100%.
through a regulated custodian like everyone else?
100%. Most times they don't. That's the honest answer. Most things don't
Hmm.
need to yet, right? There are two questions. One is, why do T-bills need to be on chain? Generally speaking, if you're an off-chain person today, right, you can buy T-bills anywhere. You don't need to buy them on chain, right? These are really for
Hmm.
crypto native institutions and crypto native audiences, right? That people who want access to the T-bill or want access to a risk-free yield, right? But can't get it because they don't want to off ramp. So that's why, right? Now it's a limited market for that, right? As we've already seen. So what that does is two things. It one shows the asset issuer that there's demand on chain, and you could do it. Now, I think they quickly realize there's a limit to that, right? But what it does do is then show them that there's interest here and begin to allow them to explore what else can be done here, right? And I think what you see is very simple. Again, if you follow the path of the stablecoin, right? The stablecoin did three things. Number one, it was built for a crypto native audience. It was used for trading, used for DeFi, right? All those types of things, right? Second, as it gained adoption and people were holding it, it became a way for people in emerging markets to hold the US dollar, right? And that
Hmm.
really led to a huge wave of adoption and growth around the stablecoin. And then number three, it became a way for institutions, right, to do things like cross-border payments and remittance and all those kinds of things, right? And you're seeing the exact same thing happening with RWAs today, right? We want to first make this useful for crypto natives to show that there's volume, show momentum, show demand, and show that this can be used in interesting new ways. Right, that's what the dollar. That's what the stablecoin taught us about the dollar. There are different things that can be done on chain that you can do in the real world, right? And then those different sectors begin to kind of take their own life, right? And so today, is there additional value, right, for off-chain people? No, there isn't, right? It's useful for the on-chain audience. But then as the on-chain audience makes use of these assets and makes it more interesting and makes it composable and then makes it liquid and then puts in different structured products or indices, then other people get interested, and then that begins to grow crypto, right? And then bring off-chain
Hmm.
folks in. So anyway, we're following the same path, and I think that to me is the plan, which is make it useful first, right? And allow people off-chain to get things like AUM, right? So if you're a big fund manager, right, you can get more dollars into your products through there, and that's what these fund managers want to do, right? You can distribute them to people all over the world that you can normally distribute them to, right? And you can turn it much faster. So that's kind of like what you can do with this stuff on chain. So that's the idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I agree. Very interesting. What does the next year look like for Plume?
Um, a lot of things. It's a lot of realization and pushing things that we've been building into fruition. So we're going to have mainnet coming up very soon. That's going to be a very big deal, and that'll be a big moment for us. Of course, mainnet. People think about mainnet as just like as an ending point, it's just a starting point, right? Mainnet day one is great. Day two is more important. So we need to keep
Yeah.
building, keep growing, right? Keep the ecosystem up, right? Get more dollars in, more usage, right? And then more developers, because ultimately developers are the answer to bringing new activities and new ideas, and that's what's important. So that's going to be what happens. And I think a lot of it is like we're going to have, in my opinion, a blow off top, next year, right? How long does it last? We'll see. But we're excited to just really try and bring another dimension to crypto and allow people. Again, we're not RWA maxis at all, right? When things are going up,
Mhm.
go nuts, right? We do think you should do everything on alts, right? And it's to be able to use these in different ways and put them together. So that's what we're really excited about. Is just like I think in a looser regulatory environment, right, where the world is coming together. You're seeing Asia and the Middle East and Latin America all come together on this stuff. I mean, just like so many great things, and also really catalyzing like the BTC audience, right? There's so much happening in BTC as well that we really want to, again, make these assets useful for people who are holding tons and tons of crypto native assets, be able to use these interchangeably, right? And take out, use BTC to take out a loan, or maybe get some real yield against it, right? Maybe take your real assets, flip them into BTC as well. There's a lot of different things we do. So really excited for that, and also really excited for what you guys are doing at Yala, and looking forward to working together.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Yeah, very excited about this. I think it's been really interesting to learn about Plume and what you guys are working on. So I
Perfect.
guess one question, just to not to keep you too long.
No,
You
no, of
said mention
course.
or grow the developer ecosystem.
Yes.
Is that how do you view this? Is this onboarding like building out the Plume development team, or is it onboarding new projects, new integrations to function as part of the ecosystem, or is it to create like an independent developer ecosystem, or like how
Totally.
do you approach this?
I think it's all of those things for what it's worth. I mean, the starting point is to grow our own team, right? That's what the funding is
Hmm.
for. We announced our Series A today for what it's worth. We raised $20 million. And so that's part of that money is to build our own team, right? Which is to build products and build tools for other folks out there. And I think, like you said, then there's two things there, right? We've always built a set of tools to abstract away, right, the pain of working with RWAs for on-chain developers or off-chain developers. So there's a bunch of stuff to go there. And then also there's a bunch to come, but we have a whole program around, around an accelerator to help different builders come in and get exposure and get access and get funding, and get all the things they need to help build in RWAs and build on Plume as well. So a lot more to come there. My marketing team will kill me if I say anything too soon, but that's the idea, is to do all these things, right? It's our team, it's then tooling, it's then our developer ecosystem, and then I think also then building tools to make it easier for other developers who are outside of crypto to come and interact with this world, right? Because that's how we've always seen this, is there's a bridge between these two things.
Yep, that makes sense.
Awesome. Cool.
And I guess lastly, can you tell us when when mainnet
Soon.
will we can kick your marketing team from
Yes.
the space if that helps.
Soon. So yeah, I mean it's coming up in Q1. So we're like right around the corner from this.
Yep.
And we are been trying to pull it ahead, as people are gone for the holidays and stuff. So we'll see. But it's coming up very shortly around the corner. And so I would say stay tuned on Twitter and everywhere that we are, which is the website, on Twitter, on Discord, on Telegram or whatever. We're always available, so ping us anytime. But it's right here. Some people have access already from a developer standpoint, but we will be. We're looking forward to getting this out there and seeing the community's feedback.
Awesome. I'm excited to watch it unfold.
Perfect.
It's a really interesting chat today. Thanks a lot for joining.
Totally. And thanks so much for having me, and really excited for what you guys are doing today. I think there's a ton to do. I mean, I think it's very clear that, it's just funny to think that it took so long for people to sort of like get into, or like to see this, because it's so obvious that, BTC, and be able to use BTC everywhere, right? And be able to sort of like bring smart contracts and bring this stuff to BTC is just such an obvious place to grow, and such an obvious thing that we should bring in, because all the liquidity in cryptos and BTC anyway, right? And so there's a ton to do here. So we're really excited to figure out a lot of things that we can do together, and also bring real yield over to BTC, and also bring Yala over to Plume as well. So a lot to do together.
Yep, definitely. And I guess you're seeing how fast it's been unfolding over the last I guess year or two, or I don't even know when BTC Fi has started trending. I
Yeah,
guess it was a year or two ago.
it really
But
is crazy because it's still fairly early, and if we
yeah,
see just a fraction of what we've seen in the other smart contract worlds, which is like, it's obviously going to happen, right? And it's already happening in front of our eyes, right? Like it's going to be like astronomical, and there's just so much just sort of like very simple blocking and tackling to do there that's going to unlock a tremendous amount of value. And so I think that's a huge part of it. I think we combine these worlds together, right? BTC5 plus all the DeFi stuff, right? And CD5, like, or RWFi, like all these things can come together in very interesting ways, and that I think that's how we blend these worlds together. So a lot to do here.
yeah, waiting for a big year. I guess
Yes,
take
sir.
some time off for Christmas and then get back to work.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks so much for having me today. It's been great to chat, and would love to have you. We have like a pod as well, so we'd love to have you on, and have the team over. And there's a lot more that we can do together. So,
Yeah,
anything
we'd love
that
that.
anything we can do, ping us anytime. We're always around. But thanks again for bringing us on.
Perfect. I appreciate that. So, have a good
All
day
right,
and enjoy the holidays.
take it easy. You too.
All right. Thanks
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.